when we say we have to be examples to each other and role models, so John Paul was a role model to me, but that doesn't mean that John Paul never made any mistakes. I've seen him angry, and he was just the most fully human person I ever met, with everything that entails. Yeah.
Welcome to Apostolicam Actuositatem, an interview series on effective apostolic activity for the 21st century. My name is Christopher Pereira. I'm the CEO of Tepeyac Leadership.
My name is Andreas Widmer, and I'm the director of the Sioka Center for Principled Entrepreneurship at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. I'm happy to be here, and welcome to our first episode.
Andreas, thank you so much for being part of this project and for this first episode. Of course, what we want to do is give people an idea of what they're going to find in this interview series, in this video series that we have chosen to call Apostolicam Actuositatem. And we're going to talk about why we named it that way. But perhaps you can get us started by sharing just a little about what is our vision for this new video series.
So the vision for this series is to talk about, Vatican II called us in the church as lay people to universal holiness in the everyday life. We're supposed to be the leaven in society. And while that all sounds nice and fine, how do you actually do this? What does this mean? How do you bring the spirit of Sunday and the Lord of Sunday into the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, concretely, not just on an ephemeral level of just thinking about things, but to actually say, how is this turned into action on the everyday? And that becomes very specific. Now we're going to talk to all kinds of people from all walks of life who somehow lead in this. And as Christians, we always have to be leaders in our life. And we want to talk about the different situations of how people apply this call to universal holiness in their specific job, in their specific situation, where they live, in what they do, so that we can all be inspired. We inspire each other to action, so that we can all turn around and model that and in our daily lives. I think that's sort of the gist of what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Through the centuries, as Catholics, lay Catholics, we have looked up to the saints as inspiration for growing in our own relationship with Christ and sanctification. I think that today, in the 21st century, we can look at lay Catholic leaders who are becoming those examples, those models, those icons for most of the laity that perhaps is just beginning to engage in that walk. And I think about this as a beginning, because not every lay Catholic, I believe, Andreas, correct me if you disagree, but not every lay Catholic has realized that he or she has a call to holiness, that we are all called to holiness, and that we can find that in the midst of our professional lives.
Yeah. That's interesting. You bring that up. I like that. What I want to point out, what's important to me right off the bat is, I sort of had my conversion. I'm a cradle Catholic, but didn't really pay attention to my faith or find Christ, until I met John Paul II. That's my big change event in my life. I was in the Swiss Guards, and I in a sense was ministered to by the Pope, by John Paul, but not in his role in a sense as the Pope, but I worked with him. So in a way, through the working together, he evangelized me. Now they're saying this is Saint John Paul II. And right away, and I do a lot of talking about him, and right away people then say, well, it's a saint, so that guy probably never made any noise when he walked, and he never made any mistakes. And we have this notion of holiness when we say our universal call to holiness, that means we somehow become other human, and that is not true at all. One of the goals that we have, I think that's on our heart, yours and mine, is to say, we want to show what holiness really means. And holiness is something that unless you're dead and in heaven, you're not really going to be holy yet. Holiness is something that, as long as we live, is always becoming. It never is. Right? And so therefore, when we say we have to be examples to each other and role models, so John Paul was a role model to me, but that doesn't mean that John Paul never made any mistakes. I've seen him angry, and he was just the most fully human person I ever met, with everything that entails. Yeah. But what we're called to is to say, at times we allow God to act through us and do something really good, and then we owe it to everybody else to allow ourselves to be a role model. And that doesn't mean you have to be a role model and therefore you never make a mistake. There's a hesitancy for people to come on our show and say, well, I'm not a role model. Well, maybe that's true, but maybe you're a role model in this. And it's like when you play sports and you hit the ball really well on this one shot, then you owe it to everybody for us to look at this and say, this went really well. Let that be a role model. And so I invite people in to say, let's see when it works really well. Not that we are proclaiming people to be holy or saints, other than saints in the making. Like we
Absolutely.
all, everybody is, the only person who never sinned on earth is Jesus Christ. And that's our ultimate role model. But we can support each other by being inspirations to others when something works well and we share it.
And of course, Our Lady received a special grace as well.
Yep.
In that sense. But I think that you are right on target, because it's about knowing our destination and our purpose on life. And many lay people, Catholic professional men and women think of their job as a distinct department, completely separated from their spiritual life. And maybe they are very fired up for the faith, but the way that they express it is every weekend or in the afternoon or every Sunday, they go to the parish and they start to sign up for every ministry or apostolate or whatever activity they can to be of support to their pastor or to their bishop, which is good in and of itself. Nothing wrong with that. But as lay people, and particularly those who have been blessed with a professional career, we believe, I know that you and I are convinced that should be our field of mission. That's precisely where God wants us to become ambassadors of his gospel.
That's what you just triggered this thought in me, that I had a spiritual director late in the 90s, and I started to have pretty strong spiritual experiences around the Eucharist that caused me to say, I need to do more. I want to be more attentive to Christ and do something about my faith and so on. And so I actually went to the spiritual director and said, I want to study theology and I want to get into ministry and help in the church and everything. And that really wise man, it was up in Boston, that really wise man said, nah, I don't, he's like, I don't think you should study theology. I think what you should do is you should study ministry. And then you should not go into work in the church. We have enough of you in the church. What you need to do is you need to go back out. You need to come in here and study ministry specifically, not theology, ministry, and then go back out and go back into the boardroom and go back into the companies and go and bring Christ in there. Because that's where and he had a Roman collar, with this outfit, will never get to. That's your job. I can take care of the church. Like I can take care of Sunday Mass, but I can't do this during the week where it counts, like in these companies. And that was a real changing point in my life, because he redirected me. I did end up studying ministry, and my focus ended up becoming, because of the inspiration of this spiritual director, to focus on evangelizing and bringing Christ into business and work, and to the companies and everything I do. I mean, now I teach business, but always with that aspect of saying, how are we, in our call to universal holiness, how are we as Catholics called to live in business and to act and carry out that mission of business?
Absolutely. And this is just what you do, right, Andreas? And of course, that's why I think we're doing this, because our missions so much align themselves, and so they're so similar. But another aspect that I see, and it bounces off just of what you just said, which is that some lay men and women who want to serve Christ and serve the church believe mistakenly, as you did, that the way to do that was to become a theologian or an apologist or a catechist, right? Or to go out into the street with the Bible and evangelize. And all of those things are good. And some people have those callings. But for the majority of the laity, our calling is within the world. And just like you expressed it earlier, if we don't do it, the Pope, the bishops, the priests, they are not going to be able to insert themselves into the secular fabric of society as to influence from within.
That's one of the great, beautiful insights that Vatican II has taught us, to say that evangelization and the spreading of the kingdom of God, right, and the apostolic mission that we have as the baptized, is something that needs to be carried out not just in a silo inside the church, and not in a silo among just Catholics, but we should go out into the civil society and government and business and actually go and do that work of charity there, to actually go and love people where they're at, and to do this. And I think the way God speaks to us often is with the stuff right next to us. Like, I had this vision of saying, I'm going to quit this and this work I'm doing, and then to go and go into catechesis or a hospital ministry or everything. But I have no connection to a hospital whatsoever, and I wouldn't know where to start. And, maybe sometimes God asks you for something like this. But what this priest showed me is that, no, read what God is talking to you. You have unique access in your companies. You run companies. You have unique access that people that otherwise would never be reached with this message. And you have the sensitivity through friendships that how to approach these people, and you can live out the gospel in front of them, which is an attractive thing to do. And I encourage everybody, you and me, and all these people who are going to listen or watch this and come on this show, to actually, that's the kind of discernment we need to do, is saying, in this place that I am here, what is the Lord giving me as opportunities where I can live my calling in the situation that I'm in. Often we're not aware of this, and
right where we are, right? I have a very good example of what you're talking about. Just the other day, I was speaking to a close friend who is an anchor for a secular news media station, and she had just run into this situation that was very difficult and frustrating for her, where she was actually accused by her supervisors. This is what they told her. So you're trying to advance your Catholic agenda, aren't you? This is what they told her, because she was just it was nothing like trying to advance an agenda. It was a situation where she was trying to be a mentor for a young lady who was also a practicing Catholic. But for whatever reason, she was so frustrated. She told me, I don't know what to do, Christopher. I think I'm just gonna it's time for me to leave the secular media and go work in the Catholic media. And I told her, no, do not do that. Can you just imagine how few faithful and committed practicing Catholics we have now in the news media? If you leave, who else is going to be there to influence that space for Christ?
That's difficult. Like, I am sensitive to the fact that you can't. There is an approach. There's a sensitivity of how you do this, and true evangelization is done, and especially started, with acts of love, not with acts of preaching. So when I'm saying, and I think we agree on this, to go into the secular society and advance the apostolic mission, to be a follower of Christ, that is primarily done through. Apostolic activity is primarily Christian service, right? You serve others. To be a servant leader in your company, you even if you never speak of Jesus Christ and you're a servant leader in the company, you stand for an example. This morning, I talked to a friend who leads a completely secular company, a software development company, and so on. And he told me that he had this huge encounter with one of his senior vice presidents. So this guy started a company, he's the CEO. He has a senior vice president who has, is not Catholic or Christian even. I don't know what he is or if he believes anything. But he had this moment of insight where he says, well, I want to know where your vision, where your strength, where you get your conviction for life, because, and he gave him the example, because when I told you once on the way out of a meeting that my son didn't have health insurance for something, and this was going to cost, $14,000 a year, and I wasn't sure how to manage this and everything. You basically didn't ask any questions. You just said, "I'll take care of that." And the next thing I know, you put my whole family into the health insurance plan. The way they needed something special, and he said, "I never forgot this. That your charity towards me was just a given. Like, you didn't ask any questions, and just said, yeah, I'll take care of this." And this senior vice president told this CEO, you have lived an example to me that I want to imitate. Where are you getting this from? See, this is evangelization. Where does this lead? It's by what we do. The primary aspect of this apostolic mission and of this Christian service is actually charitable action, an approach to others that is an approach of charity. And
Can you explain the reason for your joy? Is basically what he asked you, right? Can you explain the reason for your joy? And that's ultimately what this comes down to. If we are to live the Christian lives that we're supposed to witness, we don't need to go out with a Bible or a cross in our chest. Some people will have that charism, but not all. But if we can lead with joy and charity, people will want a reason. They will want to understand where it comes from. You just mentioned the name of our series, and we have only a few minutes left. So maybe this is a good chance to share what it means. Of course, the name Apostolicam Actuositatem comes from a document from the Second Vatican Council that we invite everybody to learn about. But more importantly, we want to tell to the viewers that we believe it's important for lay people to understand what their proper role should be in the church and what the proper apostolic activity that they engage in should be. Isn't that what we're going for?
Yeah, it is. We chose a name that is Apostolicam Actuositatem. It's to, in a way, actualize the apostolic mission. It's the term of a very important document along Lumen Gentium that describes this call of what we're supposed to do and what we're called to do. And I think it's fun to use this term, both because I encourage everybody to go read this document, which is beautifully fruitful if you read and pray with it. But on the other hand, it's of course a document. Everybody knows Lumen Gentium, and I think this document would be a good one to be studied more by the laity, because it's directed at us and gives us some pretty clear blueprints of what to do. And I look forward to explore this, maybe, with the different people who come in that we're going to interview, because this is something where the church gives us sort of a mental model of saying, think about it this way of what your challenges are and what your call is in civil society or in business. And then we have to go in and actually apply it. And that is very situational. And that's why we're going to bring a lot of people who have different situations of how they implement it. So to inspire us, each other, of doing the same kind of thing, or being inspired by it, by doing similar things in our lives.
Absolutely. I certainly know I need the inspiration myself, and hopefully all of the viewers will as well. I think this is a good point to wrap up this first episode, more of an introductory episode to our video series. The second one and all following should be interviews with very special guests, and we invite you, starting with this one, to like, comment, and share on this video so that we can attain the maximum exposure, possible exposure. So thank you very much for watching, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you also. I hope you join us again next time. Suggest ideas of who we could interview to show us how to be a Catholic professional out there in the business world. And until next time, we'll pray for you, and we hope to see you again.